Yeah, what you can see behind us is kind of the story at the moment. If you're wondering why it sounds relatively quiet here at Sepang, it's because in the last hour or so, rain has been falling here in Kuala Lumpur. Fortunately, not the kind of monsoonical rain that we often have at the Sepang International Circuit, but enough to put a halt to proceedings. The rain, fortunately for now, has stopped. Although, as you can see behind us, it feels like it could return at any moment, which has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, Jack Appleyard, for the teams who are planning to do some long runs this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. In particular, Marco Bezzecchi, who we had the opportunity to speak to about an hour ago. The vast majority of teams and riders managed to put a time attack together this morning, and then the idea was around 3 o'clock, around now, which is often race time when it comes to the sprint. On a Saturday, they were going to do a sprint simulation. That was Marco Bezzecchi's plan anyway, but at the moment, only the world champion Pecco Bagnaia and Somkhiat Chantra on track. And I think that tells part of the story from what we've seen over the opening 2.5 days of pre-season as well. The fact that the world champion, when conditions aren't ideal, feels he has to go out. Yesterday, he described a decision between opting with the 2024 engine or the 2025 one as 50-50. In fact, he's now out on track, the only rider out on track for the opening 5 minutes or so before Somkhiat Chantra joined him. I think tells the story that that decision is still hanging in the balance.
Yeah, we spoke to Frankie Carcetti a moment ago, Fermin Aldeguer's crew chief, and he was speaking about how Fermin Aldeguer's plan for this afternoon was to do a sprint simulation. They're now hoping that the rain stays away, so that can happen. A lot of teams were planning to do that this afternoon. If we're looking at the highlight or the headline of the day so far, Alex Marquez is currently quickest from the former world champion Pecco Bagnaia, but I think the headline from what we've seen so far this morning is that Yamaha have underlined their progress.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been looking at the lap times and trying to work out who's made the biggest step forward. Coming into this Sepang test, we had a sort of ranking of the best ever lap, whether it be some of them in qualifying when we were last here in November, some of them coming in the test when we were last here 12 months ago. Yamaha were at the bottom of that pile with a 57.5. The lap time by Fabio Quartararo today has meant that they've jumped up to second, just behind Ducati, a 56.8. They've managed to find 56.7, sorry. They've managed to find a whopping 0.8 of a second. To put that into a little bit of perspective, Honda have improved by a 10.5, KTM have improved by a 10.5, Ducati around a 10.5 slower, Aprilia 0.2 slower than their previous best. So that is a massive step forward that Yamaha have taken. We've been thinking that was the case over the shakedown and then the opening 2 days. We officially have it in a lap time form now that Yamaha have closed the gap to Aprilia and KTM and are going to be there fighting for podiums on a regular basis this year.
Yeah, the theme of this Midday Live is going to be positivity amongst the Japanese manufacturers. If you come with us this way, we can introduce our guest for this afternoon, newly installed technical director at Honda HRC Castrol. It is Romano Albesiano. Romano, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to our Midday Live. First of all, give us a summary of how Honda's test has gone so far.
Well, it's been very important testing. We had many different versions of components. It's been a huge work for the mechanics and for the riders, but at the end we found a good base for starting the season.
It feels as if the general feedback from the riders, certainly speaking to the media, has been positive. Joan Mir described the day they had yesterday as the best test days had so far with Honda. Can you feel a general sense of optimism and a buoyancy around the camp?
Yes, definitely. I didn't know what to expect from this test, but my feeling now is that the general performance of the motorcycle and the riders is good. We can, as I said before, we have a base to start and to bring small development step by step to which is the right way to proceed, and we are there. We are there to get to the top in some time, probably, but it's possible.
Of course, you've moved into this role. This is the first official test outside of the one day we had in Barcelona. We know that nothing happens overnight in MotoGP, but in the 2 months over the winter, what are the things that you've been able to have an impact in the very early stages of your tenure here?
We are just try to focus on the right, let's say, targets, and organize the job for the future. This is mainly what I have done mostly in this period.
Of course, coming with you, Aleix Espargaro as well into his role as a test rider. Looking ahead over the next 12 months, 18 months, how important do you think that will be that Aleix knows you and you know Aleix so well after your time together at Aprilia?
It's a great opportunity for me, and I think also for Honda, to have the two persons that communicate efficiently for so long. So it's easy for me to understand what he says, and it's easy for me also to ask him some special test or whatever. So it's for me it's a very casual, but let's say very good combination for developing. And he's so strong in pushing his unbelievable let's say ability to push, to put energy in everything he does. So it's very nice to work with him, and I think he can be a great help too on the project.
He's a motivator.
That's right.
Always has been.
There's so much talk these days about the culture within a factory. Of course, the European manufacturers, as you've known very well from your time at Aprilia, have taken a step ahead in recent years. What is the culture you've found within Honda? Do you feel a culture is changing there? Do you feel it's moving in the right direction, or do you feel everything is in place here once the right pieces are put in the right place to move this factory forward?
For sure, the approach to, let's say, racing and development is different between European companies and Japanese companies. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I think if we can get the best from both, we can create a fantastic mixture for the future.
And of course, 2 days of testing still to go after this one. The Buriram test coming up. I guess the engine is one of the key areas that you're looking to try and find a direction. Positive signs with that. Are we expecting further steps, of course, through the year? Of course, with Honda not subject to the engine freeze, is there plenty of hard work going on to plan a direction, not just for the Buriram test, but as we go through the season?
Yes, engine is one area where we have done, the guys at Honda have done a great work to find a better connection, which it was a good step for the riders. Now we must look for more pure performance, which is something we slightly miss to be super competitive.
Looking to the future, Romano, I see a crate over there with next stop Portimao on it. Is that the next opportunity for Aleix to get out on track? What's his testing schedule going to look like over the next few months?
But actually the test in Portimao will be changed with another test in Sepang. So this is a special track for investigating some behaviors of the motorcycle. So we grabbed the opportunity to remain here and investigate a special, let's say, critical point of all the motorcycle in this track. So I think we can get an advantage from this decision.
And will that be just with Aleix or Taka as well?
Still to be decided.
Do you know when that will be?
24, 25 January.
And in terms of looking to wild cards this year as well, is there a plan for the first part of the season?
There is a plan, but it is still under evolution.
There's a plan, but you can't tell us the plan. I know how these things.
It's really, we are really still working on it.
Is that in terms of the circuits?
Yeah, which circuit, which rider, and this point.
Very good. Lewis?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. Certainly the signs at the moment seem to be positive that you're trending in the right direction, and we wish you well with the rest of this test and next weekend in Buriram as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Romano Albesiano joining us here on MotoGP.com. Of course, we'll continue on MotoGP social media channels as well as we just hop off the curb here back into the paddock. There definitely seems to be an air of optimism at Honda. They are very clear that they have a long way to go, but certainly having put the 2025 engine, or at least the first iteration of it, there certainly seems to have been a step forward in that respect.
Yeah, both Joan Mir and Johan Zarco yesterday were very complimentary of the new engine, saying that it is definitely the right direction to take. Johan Zarco was very interesting, actually, saying that although the sort of ideology behind the engine hasn't changed, it is certainly a different concept that Honda have brought, and as a result, that might take them some time today, Buriram, the opening few rounds of the year, because he said instantly it wasn't a plug-in and play version of what they've been used to previously. When they brought the new engine in and they tried to input what they've been used to maximise it, that just didn't work. They have to go in a very different direction to be able to fully utilise what this 2025 engine is bringing. And we've seen as well, I think a lot of that comes down to the different aero parts that we've seen across the board, whether it be a slightly revised rear seat unit, which we imagine has got a mass damper in it in order to try and eradicate the rear chatter issues, although Joan Mir said that they are still there. However, those issues have improved. And then the front fairing, whether it be the side pods, the size of the front fairing, there is so much work. There are, at minimum, I counted 3 different aero options that they're still working their way through even today. So that is going to require a lot of work, but the big thing is it does seem as though engine-wise the trending in the right direction. And, well, just look at Johan Zarco today. He's gone a 10th and a half quicker than Honda have ever done before, and Joan Mir is able to get under that lap time as well. So that's a positive thing. We speak about Yamaha and their progress. At the moment, Fabio is the shining light, but the good thing for Honda is it's not just one rider. It's not just one guy going out there and doing superlative things. Both Joan Mir and Johan Zarco have been able to maximise what they've brought.
Speaking of engines, it brings us to Ducati, because they're, of course, doing a lot of work with their 2025 engine to try and figure that out, try and get that to the point where Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez are happy with it. Pecco Bagnaia has been speaking through this test that with the new engine, he doesn't quite have the confidence under braking yet that he had on the GP24, which is one of Pecco Bagnaia's great strengths on corner entry. We were keeping a close eye, weren't we, on his time attack this morning, which at the time did put Pecco Bagnaia right at the very top of the timesheets. But some interesting clues from the sector times as to where Pecco was fast and where he wasn't.
Yeah, and the big clue was that Pecco was losing all of his time on that time attack, which wasn't a bad lap, by the way. A 56.5 was pretty good, but he was in the middle part of the lap, sectors 2 and 3, which are fast and flowing, the ability to really utilise the turning of the bike. He was about a 10th and a half under his, what still stands, all-time lap record, the outright fastest ever lap around here that he did in qualifying last year. But he was losing a whopping 0.3 of a second in the first sector, which is basically heavy braking into the opening corner, and the final sector, which again is just heavy braking into the final corner. So it's obvious he was out on the 25 bike because he had all of the new 25 aero on there. But as he said, he wasn't lying to us. Clearly, they have to improve the braking performance and the braking stability of the 2025 engine if they want to get it to the level of the 2024. But I think positive signs that he was only a 10th and a half, 2/10 away from his best ever lap around here. We're not saying that Ducati are in crisis and suddenly they're going to drop to struggling to score any points. They're going to be right there come Thailand. But those guys are looking to find those finer details, and it was evident that that's where that 25 engine is just lacking at the moment. But we've seen in previous years, Ducati often don't fully maximise and have the complete bike until 3, 4, 5 rounds into the year. Happened in 2023, happened last year as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in 25.
Yeah, and where that may be interesting in the early race of the season, as we touched upon yesterday, the GP24s are super, super fast. Frankie Morbidelli and Alex Marquez again right up at the top in both time attack trim, and Frankie Morbidelli did a race simulation an hour or two ago, and certainly the first 10 or 12 laps of it were very, very similar on pace to what Pecco Bagnaia was doing when he won the Malaysian Grand Prix late last year. So certainly in race trim, certainly the first half of that run, we didn't quite get an idea in the second half of Frankie Morbidelli's run because there were a few mistakes made over the course of that. Not a lot to choose in terms of race rhythm between the GP24 in current spec with Frankie Morbidelli and the one that won the race last year.
It's going to be a huge opportunity, in particular for Frankie Morbidelli and Alex Marquez in the opening 4 rounds of the year. The old adage, the cliche, is that the season doesn't start until we get to Europe. So rounds 1, 2, 3 and 4, Thailand, Argentina, Austin, Qatar. For Morbidelli and Alex Marquez, they have to hit the ground running and they have to take advantage of the opportunity that will present itself there in the opening 4 rounds of the year. If neither of them are on the podium or challenging for the podium in all 4 of those rounds, I think they're going to see it as a failure. 2
factories we yet to touch upon, so let's quickly do that. First of all, Aprilia. Of course, the story of their test is dominated by what happened to Jorge Martin and Ralph Fernandez on day 1, but we're seeing signs of progress from Marco Bezzecchi over the course of this test. You spoke to him around about an hour or so ago. What was the mood with the 72?
that was his first time attack today, and we know that to get the most out of a Ducati in qualifying trim, you have to ride the bike so differently to you would when in the sprint or in the Grand Prix. There is an art to getting the most out of a Ducati in qualifying trim, and that didn't translate across to how you ride an Aprilia in qualifying trim. Quite interestingly, Marco Bezzecchi described just how aggressive and physical it is to be able to muscle a GP25 or an Aprilia full stop during qualifying or during a time attack to get the most out of it. It was his fastest ever Sepang lap, so that's worth pointing out, by half a second as well, but he's still around a quarter of a second adrift of what Aprilia were able to do when we were last here 12 months ago. He says the engine is decided. Both him and Massimo Rivoli, who we got the chance to speak to, they found a direction, they're happy with what they've brought. The work is going to be mainly on the electronic side and to just iron out some finer details when it comes to aerodynamics as well. In particular today, we saw some addition to the rear unit, some extra Stegosaurus wings, whatever we ended up referring to them in the end, but you know exactly what I mean. So they're still playing about with aero, our Aprilia, but the positive signs are there. We know that Jorge Martin is the master at piecing one lap together. He is the best rider in the world, well, full stop, but absolutely the best rider in the world without argument over one lap. I'd have loved to have seen what he was able to do today in qualifying trim, but I guess we'll have to wait a week or so.
Yeah, Jorge Martin is now back in Europe. We're expecting him to undergo surgery imminently, and then we'll have news maybe over the weekend of what his upcoming status will be and the prognosis for the first Grand Prix of the season. And finishing with KTM, of course, we already spoke yesterday about Enea Bastianini. He kind of confirmed what we suspected midday yesterday, that he was struggling badly yesterday morning. Whilst he might have taken some small baby steps, he is still playing catch-up big time as we come towards the end of this first pre-season test. And as far as the factory team are concerned, it was also noticeable when Pedro Acosta went for a push lap earlier on this morning where he was losing time. He was losing big through the faster and longer corners.
Yes, yeah. The KTM is an animal, isn't it? Just look at it, the amount of aero on it. It has always been regarded as the bike that in a straight line is the fastest out there. It holds the top speed record, but as a result, it can be a challenge to pick it up and go from one side to another because there's that much downforce on that KTM, and that was evident throughout the middle sectors here when you do have to have that agility. We saw the Yamahas in particular, that's where they gained all of their time. I think we've seen today as well, Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini doing their first real all-out time attacks, and it's proved that the KTM is probably the most unique bike out there. The pair of them haven't really been able to piece together any kind of electric lap time. The pair of them are way outside of the top 10 at the moment. The pair of them are the riders that are struggling most out of those that have swapped manufacturers. But you look at the other guys that have swapped bikes, a couple of them have gone onto a Yamaha. Pair of them immediately were speaking about just how nice of a bike it is to ride, given the front end feeling that you get. The Aprilia is exactly the same as well. So those are rider-friendly motorcycles, whereas Enea Bastianini and Maverick Vinales, yesterday in particular, Enea saying that I just cannot ride this like a Ducati. It doesn't work. You have to have such a unique way of riding it. And as a result, I think it's going to take extra time, more time than they would have hoped for the pair of them to get to the level of Brad Binder and Pedro Acosta.
And certainly with the promise that's been shown by Yamaha, the improvement by Honda, even if it is a less obvious improvement than Yamaha, and of course the pace of the GP24s. I feel like in the early stage of the season we're going to see a lot of tears in qualifying one over the course of the year. Some big names are going to find themselves in trouble earlier on in the season, with some surprise names improving over the winter. We'll be back in a couple of hours time for After the Flag, 5:30 local time. That's 30 minutes before the checkered flag comes out. Of course, with rain in the air, we don't quite know what kind of drama we're going to see over the next 2 hours. Keep your eye on MotoGP.com for the live blog. Keep your eye on the live timing, and we'll have the full story. 5:30 local time for After the Flag. We'll see you then.